Get full access to RFR only on Patreon. Become a member of the RFR Patreon community to get more Rebel Force Radio. Bonus shows and content are available right now only at patreon.com/Rebel Force Radio.
Rebel force has penetrated the shield and landed on Endor.
This is where the fun begins.
A long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away.
This is Rebel Force Radio.
Your source for the Force.
Star Wars news and commentary.
With Jason Swank and Jimmy Mack.
I've seen Star Wars 500 times. Star Wars #1.
This station is now the ultimate power in the universe. I suggest we use it.
Now it's time for Rebel Force Radio.
We would be honored if you would join us.
Man, I'm out of it a little while, and next thing I know, there are hot debates happening on the show about coup d'etats. I didn't even know Jimmy Mack could spell coup d'etat.
Hey, I can say it, I just can't spell it.
What did Harrison Ford say to George Lucas famously? Hey, you can type this blank, but you can't say it. Yeah. Jim's got the opposite problem. No, apparently, the last 2 weeks, Rebel Force radio shows have been barn burners with the Mack brothers taking no prisoners as they just keep the flame alive while I was away with heap big responsibilities with the day job, and then followed by a really nasty bout of, I don't know if this was the flu, a cold, I don't know what it was. I was actually in bed on my phone trying to look up the definition of, cold versus flu versus virus versus, I don't know. It was something nasty, and I still have a bit of it. So bear with me, but it's great, wonderful to be back with you, and great to be back here in the cockpit. Rebel Force Radio this week's show for March 8th, 2019. Spring is near. Spring is not here if you're in the Midwest, but it is near, and we're excited to be back with you. I just want to say publicly, as I said to him privately before we started taping the show, what an honor it was for me to know that Bill was in the Bill is, Jim likes to, make jokes and talk about how, I'm kind of reclusive at times, and, I can be kind of difficult to wrangle, and he never knows if I'm going to bail on him. And, he's still holding these grudges from 8-9 years ago when I skipped a couple of conventions in the summer. But if I'm a rarity, Billy Mack is he is like a I don't know, a silver unicorn or something. So to get him for 3 consecutive shows, now you talk about a coup d'etat. That is a coup d'etat right there.
Yeah, so, Bill's overthrown.
Seriously, Bill, thanks so much.
There's a new Mack in town. Bill is conforming the Mack coup, and he is
Mackie is back,
and it's a bloody one. But no, that was a hot topic of conversation last week. It just kind of came up out of nowhere with the statement that I made. That was when Mace Windu and the Jedi approached Palpatine in his quarters and attempted to arrest him, they were performing a coup d'etat. They were trying to overthrow the government. And I do believe that they were trying to essentially instill their own government for a period of time. A coup d'etat, as I look up the definition here online, a coup is a sudden, violent, and illegal seizure of power from a government.
Okay, we know it was sudden. What did you say? What were the 3 adjectives?
Sudden, violent.
Oh, that was definitely violent. They brought sabers.
And illegal.
That's the question.
Okay, and so I brought some evidence here in the form of sound bites from Revenge of the Sith.
Oh, okay.
And so I sent them to you, Jason. You have
I have them.
And they're all numbered.
Okay.
And so in the first one, these are in order is the way it happens in the film, where either the Jedi or Palpatine is revealing or planting the seed that the Jedi do intend to overthrow the government.
You know I'm not able to rely on the Jedi Council. If they haven't included you in their plot, they soon will.
I'm not sure I understand.
You must sense what I have come to suspect. The Jedi Council want control of the Republic. They're planning to betray me.
So,
the seeds planted right there.
But so he says the Jedi are planning to overthrow. And so if you keep listening to the way this evidence unfolds, you'll come to the conclusion that this was an illegal seizure of the government when it's all said and done. Cut two.
The Senate is expected to vote more executive powers to the Chancellor today.
Well, that can only mean less deliberating and more action.
All right. So right there, they make it clear that is the will of the Senate to award Palpatine with these executive powers. Nothing illegal about that, is there? I mean, what?
Well,
it's still working within the realms of law. And
is he? Now, here's something that canonically we don't know to be true. If you go until it's overwritten, if you go back to the Plagueis novel, we are to understand that Palpatine is manipulating the senators, and I don't mean just manipulating with his charm and his, suave good looks. Right. I'm talking about he could be using the Force to manipulate and influence decision making.
Okay.
Now that I don't know if is legal, though.
Okay.
Is that really the free will of the people?
All right, but how are you going to prove such a thing?
Well, that would be hard.
How are you going to prove such a thing? I mean, how are you going to prove it goes beyond political influence and actually gets into the realm of mind control?
Yeah.
So, okay. But I mean, facts are facts.
Yes, and they are stubborn things.
Everything's going through legal channels here as far as Palpatine and his control of the government. And the Jedi are on the outside looking in, and they're coming to their own conclusions.
The fact of the matter is you are too close to the Chancellor. The Council doesn't like it when he interferes in Jedi affairs.
All right. So right there, it's revealing to us that the Jedi have a hang-up now with the Chancellor.
Okay. All right. Now, here's the thing that one of the troubling things, or one of the problems with the prequels, in a sense, where you don't really get enough context because you only see the end of Valorum, and then you see Palpatine's reign. But what we see in the beginning of the Phantom Menace is that it is within the jurisdiction of the Supreme Chancellor to send Jedi on various peacekeeping missions to, negotiate terms.
They're ambassadors.
On behalf of they're ambassadors, right?
And then they become generals in the army.
So when he's talking about they don't like it when the Chancellor interferes with the Jedi affairs, I'm assuming that in that context they're talking about when Palpatine says to the Council, Master or not, I want Skywalker on the Council.
That's right. That is right.
Yeah.
But it does establish a foundation for friction between the Jedi and the Chancellor that have more to do with politics than anything else at this point. I do want to point out something. We got a lot of listener feedback on it, and I pulled a couple of emails, not much, but listener Tyler says, I think if you look at it from the point of view as a normal person, a normal civilian in Star Wars that has no knowledge of what's going on, then Jimmy is right. It is a coup. But knowing the full story like we all do, Billy Mack was rocking this debate. Now, of course, I mean, I am taking it like I'm just looking at it on surface value. I'm not putting myself in the position of film goer. I'm putting myself in a position of someone who's watching history unfold in front of us as part of the Star Wars universe. Of course, we know more than all the characters combined. I mean, we know everything that's going on, especially considering that, like Jason says, this is prequels. It's setting up the bigger story that happens in the original trilogy. But I am definitely taking this from the point of view as just a normal citizen who is watching current events unfold with the knowledge of the legal system as it exists. And we find that the legal system on Coruscant, I believe, is somewhat similar to the legal system in real world countries like America and elsewhere. So back to the audio clips. We have another clip here where the intrigue further unfolds.
The Council wants you to report on all the Chancellor's dealings. They want to know what he's up to.
They want me to spy on the Chancellor. That's treason.
We are at war, Anakin.
So,
boy, that rings bells to current events, doesn't it?
A little bit.
A little bit. You want me to spy on the Chancellor's? So, I mean, this is where I feel as though the Jedi are really overstepping, because what they're doing two things here. One, they're subverting, knowingly subverting Palpatine's wishes by turning this, what they believe to be Palpatine's mole, but turning it around on him so that Palpatine's mole becomes the Jedi Council's mole. They're getting down in the mud and they're playing the game with Palpatine, which is one of his strategies, is to drag the Jedi down to this level. The other thing that is really unforgivable is the manipulation of this young man.
This is true. And also, I think it's clear we're hearing obvious evidence that what the Jedi are doing right now is outside proper channels. It's outside the law. It's outside the democracy. They're not working in tandem with the Senate. They're not working in tandem with the Chancellor. They are working as rogues, much like the CIA. This almost is like a CIA operation now, where they're working in a realm of secrecy, and no higher authority is signed off on this.
And they've not been elected to do any of this.
Right. They're military, essentially. They're military and ambassadors.
More like Secret Service, yeah.
And now, they've escalated. So it all kind of starts becoming very real when Mace gets a tremor in the Force and reveals what he'd been feeling for a while.
The Council wants you to report on all the Chancellor's.
Sorry, that was the old one. Hold on.
They want.
All right. Sorry about that. Here we go.
I sense a plot to destroy the Jedi. The dark side of the Force surrounds the Chancellor.
If he does not give up his emergency powers after the destruction of Grievous, then he should be removed from office.
The Jedi Council would have to take control of the Senate in order to secure a peaceful transition.
To a dark place this line of thought will carry us.
Ooh. But I mean, you hear Mace say it right there. The Jedi have to take over the Senate. So the Jedi are going to overthrow the Chancellor's office and take control of the Senate. And of course, to ensure a peaceful transition of power, yada, yada, yada. You know who else is talking about peace a lot in Revenge of the Sith is Palpatine. So, I mean, a certain point of view, two sides to every story for sure. Of course, we're removing what Palpatine eventually does as an evil dictator and oppressor and sorcerer, all that stuff. We're removing that because he hasn't done it yet. What he's done is he has ended
He's only
war.
concocted a war out of whole cloth.
But they have no proof of that. They have no proof of that. Everything is being done kind of on a whim, on a notion. And Yoda is concerned about this because he recognizes what's happening here. He sees the Jedi are elevating themselves into such a position of power. Who's to say that once they arrest Palpatine? Okay, here's one for you. Oh, no, I don't want to get too down into it. Are there any more audio clips?
That's it.
Okay, and then we have to get the counterpoint from Bill because everyone's been waiting to hear, when Billy Mack goes and sharpens up his lightsaber, he's going to have all the facts and he's going to destroy Jimmy in this debate. But should we hear from Jason? Do you want to? No, let's hear from Bill, and then
I want to hear from Bill. Yeah,
yeah. Let's hear from Bill, and then Jason will. You're the judge now.
Okay.
We'll let you be the judge, and Bill can present his case.
Well, I've been preparing for days now. No, I mean, come on. I've actually said everything I want to say. I have nothing to say. No, I'm just kidding. Okay. There's so many different facets to this. I mean, it actually is a lot more complex than I originally was thinking when I, engaged in this with Jim. But and there are a lot of unknown variables. And one of the big variables is that you're dealing with a universe where there are force powers. This actually exists. I mean, it's quantifiable to a certain degree. It's a fact. That's why the Jedi are involved in the government to begin with. I mean, there's no other reason why they would have gotten involved in the way that they did if it wasn't for their relationship with the Force. That's what the government has them there for. So, it's when you consider that, it gets very difficult to apply, really specific legal principles, because here's the thing, and this is the way I kind of break it down. You start with the question of what is the scope of their authority? Do they have the authority to arrest Palpatine? We know the Jedi have some authority. They're generals in a war. They've been militarized. There is a relationship with them in the Senate. I'm not sure of all the specifics, but it certainly is there. It existed before Palpatine rose to power. We saw that in episode 1. So they have authority. So the question is, what is the scope of it? Do they have the authority to go arrest the highest ranking official? And that raises the question of jurisdiction, which is something Jason mentioned earlier. What is their jurisdiction? Well, their jurisdiction is the Force. I think that is, why.
Wow, that's pretty wide. That's a pretty wide territory.
Well, that's why they're there. I mean, that is their role as advisors, is because they have this relationship and skill with the Force and knowledge of it. If they're not going to arrest or take into custody a Sith Lord, then who is going to do it? Are they supposed to file paperwork with somebody who has this much control over the bureaucracy? And you have to understand too. I mean, in this universe, the bureaucracy is part of the problem. I mean, they have so much of it. They don't get
right.
much done. It doesn't really work as it is. So yeah, I mean, that's my big question there. I mean, if the people who are designated as authorities of the Force aren't allowed to exercise that. I mean, if they have identified a Sith Lord, then who else is supposed to go arrest them? I just don't understand who else it would be if it's not for the Jedi. And there's this question of what is the Sith in this universe? Now, I mean, obviously there's a lot of expanded universe stuff about the history of this that I'm not familiar with. Okay, I'll be totally honest about that. But there's obviously a history of Sith oppression. It's referenced in episode 3, and so I don't know.
If I can't jump in, there is. Okay. There is, but it's ancient history. It's like 1,000 years ago. So people, after the course of time, I think people stop putting.
Yeah, but you know what though? Look, hold on. I just want to say, look at in our own world when people are still pointing to the Crusades.
Yeah, and I think there is this idea
1,000 years ago,
saga actually about good and evil and its existence with each other and what its relationship is, and I think that's what the balance is all about. You always have good and evil. You don't defeat evil totally. Every generation has to face it again. So the fact that it might have been 1,000 years, in the past, kind of speaks to the point that maybe people have become very complacent. and the Jedi are the ones who are, I would assume in this universe, entrusted with identifying such things. And of course, the fact that it happens to be the highest ranking politics kind of throws a monkey wrench into things, but it doesn't mean that they still don't have authority to confront him. And then you get to the other question, is that let's say, and I have to be hypothetical about this, let's say they do have jurisdiction and authority to arrest. Are they able to go and do it without approval, without a warrant of any kind? Just using our own legal system in the United States as reference, just for sake of argument, you do have to have a warrant in such situations, but there are many exceptions to that, especially if it's an emergency. Would this be an emergency? Because it doesn't seem that the Jedi got approval in that way. They don't have a warrant. So what's the emergency? Well, we know there is a certain state of emergency that was created and declared by Palpatine himself, which was of his own creation. He concocted this whole war they've been fighting. So I don't know. Now, Jim brings up the question of proof. I don't have an answer to that specifically. There is Anakin and his testimony about what he talked to Palpatine about. How much of their ability with the Force, how that plays into legal evidence, I have no idea. I'm not even going to try to answer that question. But anyway, perhaps, and this is just a perhaps, that this would be a situation that is of such an emergency that put enough presented such a high degree of danger that they could legally do something like this without having to go in front of the bureaucracy to get approval. And by the way, again, that goes back to the question, in this situation, I mean, would that have worked? I mean, if they didn't try to do what they did, what would they have done? I mean, Palpatine controlled everything, so are they going to use that system that he controls to
get
approval to go arrest him?
That's the question.
That's the dilemma. Yeah, it's a huge dilemma. So, and by the way, Mace would have succeeded in, if not arresting Palpatine, at least destroying him if it weren't for Anakin.
Keep in mind, though, that Mace had no intention of arresting anyone.
Well, here's the thing.
Mace wanted to kill him.
He
didn't want to deal with all of the legalities of things. He knew that they were acting outside of their mandate, but he felt that it was the necessary thing to do.
He was correct about that.
He was correct about that. Absolutely. Yeah. Now, if I can just say, here's where the Jedi went wrong, was their attempt to arrest Palpatine. They're trying to work within this system when the problem is clearly way beyond the legality of the Galactic Republic. I mean, it's way beyond that. Their idea to go in there and arrest him was stupid and foolish. They should have stormed in there and just annihilated him. And left it and said, okay, Senate, you guys put up your candidates, and we're gonna have an election here. That's the way to do it. But no, Mace thinks that he's going to go in and work with the system here, but it's impossible because the only way
he does.
The only way Mace knows how to work with the system is by taking over the Senate and taking over the Chancellor's office. So, I mean, it's impossible. They had to go in there and just kill him. That was their only option at that point, and what they should have done. The idea of going in to arrest him and presenting this Sith Lord for a trial is ridiculous.
Well, this is another level, perhaps, too, of this, spiritual group, or this religion being in bed with the government, because they're using each other. I mean, it's usually not the religion taking over the government. It's usually the government telling the religion what to do. That's the big concern. and using the religion, using the government to enforce its, its laws and stuff.
It's morality.
I mean, it creates a whole conundrum right there. But again, it's hard to apply a lot of these theories because this is a universe where these things are fact. These supernatural powers are a fact, and that changes things considerably. I mean, you would. That's why if the Jedi weren't there, you would think that, well, then, okay, great. The Jedi's not involved with the government, but doesn't that leave the door wide open for, Sith to come in completely unchecked? I mean, it's just, I mean, the whole scenario is just loaded with all these little dilemmas the deeper you get into it.
Now, what if
I suppose that's kind of the beauty of it too, but.
What if they were able to actually arrest Palpatine, take him into custody, and put him up for trial, and Palpatine wins, and he has the support of the Senate, or the Senate, throws the case out of court? They're like, "What's the matter with you? You busted in there and arrested the Chancellor without any authority, without any authorization, in a top secret operation that was working outside the system. You go put him right back in his office." What would Mace do then? Would he then take over the Senate at that point? Then I think it's clearly overstepping your grounds. And I think, that is attempting a coup.
Yeah, well, the coup issue that we were talking about is, like I said, it's a little more complex than it seems at first glance. Because I was looking up that, the definitions too, and it's like, well, what's the difference between a coup and a revolution? Well, a revolution has more people involved or something, and it seemed, but a lot of it just seems like association, right? Like, I mean, who the victors are, and there's a lot of bad connotations with the whole idea of coup d'état because it's often one dictatorship replacing another. I tend to look at it in terms of like overthrowing and replacing a government entirely. My initial response to this whole discussion was that I've never saw the Jedi that way. I don't think that was their intent. But it's a little more complex because there is that scene where that you played where Mace very much, the original intention was to make him give up his emergency powers. They said he had overstayed his term already. And, once Grievous was dead, we got to make him give up his emergency powers if he's not going to do it voluntarily. And then we may have to control the Senate. But I think they mean that as something transitional, but, I did that I didn't take into account. I had kind of forgotten about that scene. I got to be honest. So, but it doesn't mean that, like I said, there's just so many dilemmas that are presented. I mean, it doesn't mean that they shouldn't try to do something. I mean,
but here's the question, right? So, were his ability to stay in office beyond his, and it seems like there is, I don't know if it's a term limit or there's something, but there is some limitation into how long a chancellor in this universe is supposed to stay in power. If the circumstances which allowed him to stay in power changed, so that those circumstances were no longer supportive of him staying in power, then there is a case to be made that at the time of the attempted arrest, Palpatine was no longer the rightful chancellor.
How do you mean?
If his extension of his term was predicated on there being a certain set of circumstances, for example, the Clone War was still raging. Well, once the Clone War was wrapped up, and they were looking at Grievous as being sort of the symbol of that. They had already killed Dooku.
Right.
Then it was Grievous. Then with Grievous dying, then there really was no opposition, which means the war was over, and Palpatine needed to cede control. So you could make a case that Palpatine was no longer the rightful chancellor at the time of the coup.
But he was in office, and in a true democracy, you would have an election. So there would be this runoff election, and whoever would be the victor in that would be the true chancellor.
But that was the issue, is that he wasn't going to give up his emergency powers.
Well, who did they even ask him?
Grant him. They were actually, they mentioned it in the movie that they were
going to give him more.
They were going to give him more. And you have to be careful. That you can't put the law above all else. It's like using the again. I have to go back to what's familiar to me. You use the United States founding documents. It's acknowledged that we have natural rights. You can't legislate against them. That's why we have a Supreme Court, to decide issues of civil rights and so forth, because it's like you cannot. People are born with certain rights, and even if you make a law, you can't take those rights away from people, even if the law says so. That's one of the cornerstones of democracy. When the law becomes such, or the government becomes such, where everything becomes subverted like this, you would think that yes, entities such as the Jedi would be justified in bypassing some of this.
The other thing that would likely have come out is they would have been able to tie Palpatine back to the Confederacy. And if they were able to tie him back to the Confederacy, that was treason.
Well, then there you go. If they were able to do it that way, that would have been probably a more proper way to go about it. And then really try him, Then you could actually work. Then the Jedi could actually work within that realm. But once they discovered that he was a Sith Lord, which, by the way, he never does say, I'm a Sith Lord. He just says he knows all the Force. He knows all the ways of the Force, including the dark side.
That's right.
He never says that he's a Darth. He never says Sith Lord. He never says anything. And he says you're the Sith.
Voice.
Okay, he does use evil voice. Dead giveaway. Yeah. So, but I think we've explored, all the different pockets of confusion surrounding this move. I just think at the end of the day, the Jedi were working without authority. It was like a CIA raid. And I don't know, if once the Jedi discovered Palpatine was a Sith Lord, then it doesn't become a matter of politics. It doesn't become a matter of elected office. It becomes a Jedi versus Sith matter. And
it becomes a matter of religion.
They have to handle it then on their own platform and not try to weave it into the political and the political realm of law that exists.
But see, I think that's part of the message ultimately, is that these things became all intertwined with one another when they probably shouldn't have, because although I again, in a world where this stuff exists, I can't tell you exactly how it should be, but it does present many dilemmas and conflicts, obviously. When you have people who have these abilities in government office, how do you regulate something like that? When they're able to manipulate people's minds, it's just I don't know. It really boggles the mind at a certain point. You're never going to figure it out perfectly. And even go ahead.
May screwed it up. That's the bottom line here.
Well, he definitely underestimated what he was walking into. I think there's no question. I don't think the Jedi are supposed to be. The Jedi are flawed. I just don't like this idea. I guess I thought of what I was hearing was the Jedi are responsible for the Empire. They create. Even Luke in Last Jedi says, Obi-Wan created Darth Vader, created him. It's like, well, that's not really true. Anakin made his own choices. It's at the end of the day. If you don't accept that about Anakin and Palpatine, I think you're not fully embracing a certain symbolism of the story, that we make these choices ourselves. We choose light and dark,
All right. Well, I got to weigh in here. Hold on.
Okay.
Here comes the judge. If your boy is sleeping, better give him a nudge. Everybody look alive, because here comes the judge.
All right. You asked me to weigh in and give my ruling of this. It's been a fascinating topic, and I'm sure one that all the listeners will continue to throw their 2 cents in. Show at rebelforceradio.com, of course, and the voicemail line. But I don't see how you can see this as anything other than a coup. This is a coup. I don't think by definition there can be a legal coup. So I would have to say that this is definitely an illegal coup, and we're not really debating here whether it's justified or not. Seems to me the issue is, does this fit the definition, our real-world definition of a coup d'etat? And based on what I'm hearing and what I know to be true, that's exactly what this was. There was no plan. They walked in there with no plan. There wasn't like, okay, we're going to do this, and then we can get this guy and or this person, and we'll get them elected, or they can be interim or whatever. They had no plan. They had no idea. They were making it up as they went along.
Seizing control, Your Honor.
Yes. Yes, for sure. Seizing control by a non-elected entity. So I think it was definitely a coup, though Bill made a lot of great points. But I think, Bill, where you were on, it wasn't so much, is it a coup or is it not a coup? It was it justified? Was it legal? And it does fit the definition of coup.
Yeah.
Pretty textbook.
Don't ask Bill to buy you a bagel next month when you're in Chicago.
No, I sure won't. I sure won't. Sorry to disappoint. But it was laid out very well.
That's cool. Hey, Bill, you're cool. Jason, Bill, you're cool. This is This is a cool conversation. I'm glad.
Now we do have some. Do we want to go through some of the feedback here that we got as a result of this conversation?
Well,
we talked about Tyler.
No, let's skip that.
We exhausted it. We've exhausted this.
People are lining up for Star Wars, and everybody is excited, especially the Rebel Force Radio podcast.
Yeah, those podcasts are great. I got to get this podcast.
Your source for the Force.
While we have a moment, I'd like to throw out a little information to you guys about a really great deal. This is our deal of the month here at Rebel Force Radio. A friend of mine has a large supply of Star Wars bedroom table lamps. They're by Philips, official Star Wars battery-operated bedroom LED table lamps by Philips, currently available now at Amazon. And for very low price, $9.30. You get these great little battery-operated LED table lamps that are fantastic for kids' rooms, or in my situation, I've placed them on shelves in my Star Wars room. And I'll be putting up photos of that at the Rebel Force Radio Facebook page. You can choose from Darth Vader for $9.30 or Stormtrooper for $6.10. $6.10 for a cool little battery-operated table lamp. So take advantage of this deal. We have links up at rebelforceradio.com. Also, look at the Rebel Force Radio Facebook page, where we also have links where you can go to Amazon and purchase this item, these Star Wars bedroom table lamps. And I just want to thank our friends at Dutch West, who are listeners of Rebel Force Radio, for tipping me off to this great deal. So I'm tipping you off.
If Bill can stick around, I'd love for him to stick around at least for the first headline.
Okay.
He's got to bail.
Okay.
Hey, real quick, how about before we let Bill go, do we want to talk at all about the Toy Fair reveals from a couple weeks ago?
Did you guys not cover that at all?
No, we really didn't. We saved it for you. We saved it. Yes.
Oh, I'm so thrilled. I'm so thrilled. Well, there were a number of things that were revealed, but I think what caught everyone's attention was the well, you can't even just call it vintage. The vintage retro line of Star Wars action figures. This is an incredible. Well, on the surface is a re-release of some of the original vintage Kenner figures. I believe they've announced 8 of these that are going to be released. Let me see. It's been a while here. Yes. So we're looking at Luke Skywalker, Chewbacca, Darth Vader, Stormtrooper, Princess Leia, Han Solo. And if you're in mid-yawn, stop your yawning because I'm going to throw down with number 8, which is Grand Moff Tarkin. Okay. So
is it big head or small head, Han?
You know, disappointingly, it's big head Han, and I can't for the life of me figure this out. As a kid, the white whale for me as a kid collector was Little Head Han. My older cousins had him, and I got stuck with Big Head Han until I went to a flea market and found Little Head Han. And when I bought him for like $4 at the time, I never looked back. I never even touched Big Head Han. What an abomination that thing was. He looked like Shemp from the Three Stooges.
He definitely, Mo.
I think he bears an uncanny resemblance to Dee Dee Ramone from the Ramones. But the small head. Am I understanding this right? The small head was the first one. That was
the small head was the first one. Yeah,
but isn't that the same head they used on the Bespin Han? Later?
Bespin Han, no. Bespin Han was an all-new sculpt.
Okay.
And it looked more like Little Head Han. Bespin Han.
Yeah.
It's similar. Yeah. But apparently, the folks at Kenner at the time, they looked at Little Head Han and they go, this doesn't look anything like Harrison Ford. Let's make him, big-nosed and, hair all over the place. And they made that, and it looked awful. He just looked like a creature. I was not a fan. But here's the thing. This is part of the big debate. And Bill, I was really glad when you were able to be here for this because I know that like me, you enjoy restoring some classic vintage toys. You love watching guys like Toy Polloy on YouTube. Yes. If you're into that, I love the guys over at Retro Blasting. That's another awesome YouTube channel. Yeah. Really fun and knowledgeable people over there. So this idea of taking your vintage figures or toys, giving them a little scrub as Toy Polloy does, in the kitchen sink with a toothbrush and some dish soap, and getting a little acrylic paint and touching them up, and maybe even going so far as to buy a set of repro weapons so that when you display them, they look like new. This is controversial now. Well, I shouldn't say now. This is a controversial thing for a lot of people. A lot of collectors think that there's something devious about this. That what you're really doing is you're gonna dupe somebody at a convention or a flea market somewhere and try to sell them something that has been reproed, in a sense, and try to sell it as vintage in great condition or what have you. So this whole reveal is sort of the backdrop of this is this division with collectors. Some people think that repro weapons and in some case newly fabricated figures or parts or what have you have no place. They need to be completely taken out of collecting. And so this has just stirred the pot. So what are your thoughts, Bill? I mean, you don't even have to buy repro weapons. You can buy a whole repro figure. I look, I don't. I've been collecting a long time. I don't just collect Star Wars. I've collected baseball cards, records. I feel like I got the collecting bug from my dad. Both me and Jim did, and I've been in that world my whole life. Reproductions have always been a part of every collecting field. It's not new. They make replacement pieces for cars.
jewelry, guitars. I mean, you name it. And here's the thing. I people should not. I just think people get way too worried about this stuff. The originals are always distinguished as different and more valuable. I mean, in every field that I can think of, you have something that's in good condition, that's all original, that's going to be worth more. I don't think these toys are going to be any different. The only issue that I do acknowledge is when they're made so well where you can't tell the difference.
Well,
and I can see that happening with the weapons, but I mean, it's like automobile parts. I mean, the whole reason why those reproductions exist in the first place is because they're there to meet the demand for things that are no longer made anymore. And I mean, if the weapons have gotten extremely pricey, and I've seen people paying $40 for a little Leia blaster. I'm not going to do that. I'm not that kind of collector. I am fine getting a loose figure and getting a reproduction weapon. I do think there should be a way to tell. And I think people who are paying $50 for a little weapon should educate themselves a little bit. I do think that the burden has to be on them to a certain degree. I mean, I've seen guys at shows walking around with black lights and. There are ways to do this.
Well, let's clear the air about a couple of things. One, they've got the ability for someone to pass these off as originals. I think is pretty minimal. First of all, they are based on the original molds. They are not cast from the original molds. There are some differences. So these are resculpts based on the originals, okay? And the card backs themselves have a big old sticker that says Retro Collection in multiple languages.
Yeah, nobody's going to confuse that.
No, and they have sort of a faux distressed edging to them, so it doesn't. You can't even get literally cannot get a mint on card version, which is actually a big one problem that I have with this line. However, once you get past sort of the collector aversion to these, there's another side, and that was, I think, what Jimmy Mack shared with me through many texts and a few phone calls, was a big boring. I've seen it. I have it. I've done it. Show me something new, Hasbro. Well, is that where you're at, Jim?
Well, there's a few things that I feel when I look at these reproduced vintage action figures on these cards. I mean, there's a few things I feel. The first one is so selfish and so greedy. But to me, these action figures represent a moment in time, a specific moment in time, 1978 to 1985. And that specific window of time was when I grew up, when I was a kid and I became a teenager, and Star Wars was there. And I grew up with Star Wars, the original trilogy. And so I consider the design and everything to be like precious and specific to that time period. And now just to see them now, if they're out and about and I'm seeing them and like I go to the dentist office and some kid has left them on the floor there, I'm going to freak out because it's going to be, like, what are these doing here? These don't belong in this decade. So that's crazy. Like I said, selfish and greedy, because I want to keep the specialness of purchasing those action figures based back in time, or make it so you have to pay big bucks for it and collect them.
I don't think these are ever going to be a mainstream item that you're going to see in the real world.
Guys, it's totally emotional, okay? I didn't say it was rational. It's just emotional. It's emotional. It's my, it's how I passionately have collected and connected with this specific line in the past. And what I'd like to see is with the Tarkin figure, I love the idea of that. Let's start presenting figures in that style and make a legitimate continuation of those old action figures. And if you're going to do that, I think it's fair. Then you should put out at least the original 12 so kids nowadays can have a running start and build the collection that way. But, I mean, so I do approve of these. I like the Tarkin. I wish the Tarkin wasn't coming with the Escape from Death Star game because I have like 3 of them already. And, they'll probably charge like $30, $40.
Honestly, I don't know. Is that a vintage game?
Yes, it is.
Escape? Okay.
It's one of the original items, one of the first items to come out from Kenner. Is they were under the gun because Star Wars was so popular, but they didn't have the action figures ready yet. So they could create things like puzzles, coloring books, Dippin' Dots, and this board game, Escape from Death Star. And this came out very early, before the action figures even. And so you have to buy that game again, and it's going to come with Tarkin, and I know it's going to be like $40. So now I'm paying $40 for the Tarkin. I waited all this time, and now you're going to
It's only going to be $20.
Oh, that's it? Then I'll buy it.
$20.
Then I'm going to buy a couple of them. So it's all good.
And it will be available at most major retailers. The single carded figures, the Chewie Luke Han, Leia Stormtrooper, those are all going to be available exclusively at Target, which means it should be available in spring 2019, which means they'll probably hit my Target sometime between 2 a.m. and 4 a.m. on a random Wednesday night, and one guy will get them all, and I'll be buying these off of eBay.
That's how it works.
That's how it works.
I don't even go on figure hunts anymore because there's never anything out there. There's never ever anything out there.
They've got severe problems.
So I'd much rather prefer to support retail, and I do like to go and look to make sure the paint apps are good, or if I'm going to keep it on the card, I get a nice minty card and stuff. But those days it feels like they're over. You have to get them in. Sit to your house in a box, and the box looks like it was kicked around a million times. Ooh, by the way, currently shipping is the Jabba sail barge. That was the big HasLab initiative, and I got one coming to my house. So,
I'm living vicariously. Bill and I are both living vicariously through you, Jim.
Have you got the spot set up for it?
I know where I'm going to put it. Yes, but okay.
I'm hoping that you can hold off on unboxing it until we get out there for celebration.
No, I'd like to shoot a video right away and maybe have Puppet Lando join for the unboxing, and I think that would be funny.
Yeah, but you got to wait for me to get out here. Come on, wait, baby.
Wait, I can't wait. It's coming next week.
I know.
Next month. I'm not going to sit there with that thing unopened.
I did buy. Of course, I pre-ordered everything after Toy Fair. I spent a ridiculous amount of money as soon as everything that was able to go up online went up online. I missed out on the barge. I just hemmed and hawed about it, and at the end of the day, I am at peace for not having bought it because I don't have the space, and it would be a crime. Like, you should literally be arrested if you buy this thing and don't display it. It has to be displayed, and I'm so happy that Jimmy Mack got one because I know it's going to be displayed as God intended. It'll be in the Star Wars room.
Yes. You're making it religious now,
Yes, for sure. I did, however, buy, because I'm caught up in so much of, Return of the Jedi is my sentimental favorite Star Wars movie of all time. And there's so much Jedi love right now with some of the waves of figures that are being released in support of the barge, and also the re-release of the Skiff. And that's an Amazon exclusive. I believe it's an Amazon exclusive, and I did pre-order that. So I will at least have the Skiff so I can get some of Jabba Palace denizens out there, and Jedi Luke flipping off the thingy there. What is it? The plank. So I'll have that set up. So I'm very excited about that. But the barge, that just looks unbelievable. Just unbelievable. It is truly a collector's wildest dream fantasy come true. It's incredible.
Totally.
So some other things that were revealed at Toy Fair, in addition to this retro collection, which I will be buying, But I got to say, I agree with Jim 100%. I would have much rather seen the first wave of these be almost exclusively a continuation. You guys remember there were some prototypes made of like a Jedi Luke, like in robes?
Yeah.
I would have loved to have seen that show up. I think Tarkin is great. I would have loved to have seen
Lumpy.
Mala. Lumpy. Can you imagine throwing in some of that stuff? That would be incredible. But I would settle for any of the characters that weren't made initially. If you want to throw a Lumpy in there, that's fair. That's fair. I'll take that. But a Biggs would have been great. A Yavin ceremony Luke would have been really fun. Of course, a Han Solo in Stormtrooper disguise. That would have been great.
I think that one is coming.
Yes, that one actually is coming. You're right, Jim. That's going to be another exclusive. But for the most part, I'm happy about these. I'm not threatened by them. I'm gonna collect them. I think that
I'm not threatened by them.
I'm not. I think some people are really threatened by these stupid things.
And Bill really broke all that down pretty succinctly, I think. And there's always going to be purists. There will always be purists. My purity comes from my emotions, and I don't want them back out here in the wild again. I'll be honest with you. I don't like the false aging and wear.
I don't either.
On the cards.
Either. Why would they do that?
That's really cheapy looking.
But I don't like playing up to these religious collectors.
It's probably I mean, I think it's probably another safeguard. I'm thinking.
And also, I don't like the big red circle that says retro collection.
Yeah, I mean, that could have been a little more subtle. But yeah, I mean, the idea, look, it's like like I said, anything else you collect, movie posters, some of them are they sell for, I don't know, tens of thousands of dollars. Now, if I'm a movie fan and I want that poster, you got to tell me I have to spend all that money. They reprint them. I can go buy a reprint if I like it enough. Everybody shouldn't have to pay that much. So
no, and
it's nice to have these things as long as you can tell the difference. That's really the only the only place I really side with people on. If it's an exact reproduction that you can't even tell, that obviously creates a lot of problems, and it's not necessary. It's really not necessary to do that. There can be very simple ways to differentiate these things.
Another place that I've really enjoyed the sort of the retro vintage treatment is I am so close to converting to solely Black Series 6-inch figures. I'm like this close to just cutting ties with 3 3/4, but I still but wait a minute, but I still do.
It's like I still punch in the gut. That's a punch in the gut.
I know, but what I'm loving is I love that anniversary, that 40th anniversary line that they did for the Black Series figures, where they put them on a bubble rather than in the Black Series box, and put those vintage cards on. Now, guys, you want to feel old? How about Episode 1 cards being vintage now? That is vintage, baby. It's been 20 years, so they've got 2. Incredible Black Series figures coming out. They're going to be Celebration Chicago exclusives. A Darth Maul and a Episode 1 Obi-Wan Kenobi, but on that Darth Maul card, but in 6-inch format. I'm really pumped about these. I love that Ewan McGregor look that he had in the initial Phantom Menace. I also am digging the nostalgia of that Phantom Menace card, so And we really have needed a re-release of the Darth Maul figure because he goes for crazy prices on the aftermarket. And don't forget, these are the photo real face paint apps. So you're really getting a real high quality sculpt and paint apps for $20. So this will be the first time that Darth Maul's been released with that photo real technology. So I'm really down for these. So if you're a Rebel Force Radio listener and you're going to be at Star Wars Celebration Chicago and you want to wait in line, I'll pay double the price. So I'm going to put it out there right there. They're going to retail. Yeah, they're going to retail for $25. No, they're going to retail for $25. at Star Wars Celebration, and I will pay $50 a piece for each.
Oh, solid hundo.
And
Somebody's
I'll pay
got
cash.
to take you up on that. I mean, for
Absolutely.
crying out loud. They're probably flooding the email already.
Yeah, so I will, and there have been listeners in the past that have done this for me. So, and I always appreciate it because it's not that I don't want to stand in line. It's just that, we got all kinds of podcasting and stuff we got to do, so I'm not able to do that. But I will give you a crisp Benjamin Franklin for those two figures. A C note. That's right.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
right. Now,
And
what do you
what?
think?
These are good looking figures. I do like seeing the 6-inch on the classic episode 1 cards from 1999. And call them vintage if you want. I do know there is a strong nostalgia for these red cards with Darth Maul on it. For myself alone, remembering that Midnight Madness.
Crazy.
It was just everyone was just flooded into the Toys R Us, and the guys were coming out the back with case after case, dumping them into empty shopping carts while grown men were elbowing each other to get the figures. And it was great.
I remember going into a store with you during that time, and you're walking around like humming Duel of the Fates, going through the toys. I took a step back and I looked at it. I'm like, this is my older brother. This is my older brother.
This is what he's become.
He says, follow me, Bill. Here we go.
Here we go.
So, but see, fond memories. And I think of those red cards.
Yes.
And, of course, the kids who grew up in the late 90s and the prequel era was their Star Wars. They look at these and have mad nostalgia for it. I mean, are you kidding me? So those guys are going to be in line big time for these 6-inch figures. But
now, what do you guys make of this? There's just one figure that's been released so far, or been announced so far. This Hyper Real 8-inch line from Hasbro. Now you got a Darth Vader figure that has got according to the description, a pretty incredible sculpt, but it also comes with multiple hands. I think is it just multiple hands. Yeah, it looks like just multiple hands and a display base. This is going to be an 8-inch figure, so it looks like they're prepping us for another line, perhaps. So 4-inch wasn't enough. 6 inches enough. All right, we've got 8 inches of Darth Vader for you. With soft goods. Don't forget the soft goods. Man, oh man, it's $80 a piece. What do you think?
Pass.
Yeah, me too.
I
gotta say, me too.
$80 for an 8-inch action figure. That's $10 an inch.
That's what I charge.
Hey, there's like I was just going to say, there's better value out there. So
right. So I only charge $8. So I would just say that the 8-inch seems like a sort of a desperate grab. Here's something though that's interesting to me. If you notice the characters that they're putting on the shelves, the characters that they're really promoting, you've got a lot of Jabba's Palace characters that are showing up, which is awesome. You even have a play set. I mean, this of all the things that were revealed at Toy Fair, the thing that excited me the most was the Jabba's Palace adventure set that is coming out, and this is where you actually get the wall, the iconic wall that the Han Solo carbonite slab hung upon with the tauntaun. What do you call that? Hanging up.
Taxidermy.
Yeah, right. And then I don't know what
trophy,
the other thing is. The trophy. Yeah, it's the trophy wall. Of course, in vintage style packaging, which is great. Vintage has made a big comeback this year.
Now, Jason, were you more of a playset guy or a ships and vehicle?
I was a playset guy. I was definitely a playset guy
Me
over ships and vehicles. I never had a memory for vehicles, really. I couldn't remember one from the other. I mean, other than, some of the more obvious ones. But I still don't know a B-wing from a Y-wing. I'll be honest. I really don't.
My God, stop. Just stop.
I don't. I know what an X-wing is. I know what an X-wing is.
My thing about this Jabba Palace, though, is it's just the wall where Han is hanging up, frozen Han, and 2 arches. There's not much of a playset there. It's more like Jabba's wall.
Well, it's kind of Jabba's wall. But if you have the Jabba that was released some years ago, right, and this was the good one. This was the one that came with the dais and then the pillows and the little salacious and all that.
Well, listen, it's cool and all.
So you can put it together a nice diorama, and then you can flip the carbonite slab around, and it looks like Han just came out of it.
Oh, neat. And it comes with 2 figures, Han and Reese.
Yep.
And it looks really great. And but I'm saying that maybe they'll release more of Jabba's palace, because what I would like is where he sits, and they're like roasting. They have a roast going on behind him.
Mm-hmm.
Stuff like that.
That would be great. That would be great. But so I think that this is a step in the right direction. We're seeing things like the barge. We're seeing things like the skiff coming out. We're seeing this play set. I think they're all really positive signs. Now, here's something that I think is kind of a weird sign.
I think what's going to be a really weird sign is Billy Mack tomorrow morning. If we
all right, we got to let Billy go
right now.
Bill, thanks for hanging with us, man. I could talk to you all night. Appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. Yeah,
and have a great time at the whatever you guys are doing, the debauchery. It's going to be happening
tomorrow night.
Mack Brothers tomorrow night. But anyway, thanks for hanging. Appreciate it. Sorry it was such a late start tonight. My fault.
It was well worth it. It was a lot. See, it was a lot more civil having you around to mediate everything.
Oh, that is true. We could have used someone like Jason when we were kids.
I could have been your buffer.
Well, instead of putting our fists through drywall, we would have. We could have put it through you.
Well, good talking to you, Bill, and I'm looking forward to seeing you in a few weeks, man. We're gonna have a blast.
I know. I can't believe it. Only a month away. All right, man.
All right, Billy Mack, ladies and gentlemen, Billy Mack. Fantastic. All right,
see you, buddy.
All right, man.
Oh, by the way, speaking of next month. Tickets for RFR Live in Chicago still on sale at reggieslive.com. That's reggieslive.com. And they have a concert calendar there. You'll want to go to April 11th, and you'll see the link for tickets for RFR Live in Chicago. It's going to be an amazing event, and tickets are on sale now. $25 in advance, $30 at the door. This event is 21 and over. It's at 2105 South State Street, about a mile away from McCormick Place. You'll get there no problem. And we'll all be hanging out there right after the first day of the convention. Hopefully I have more of a voice by then.
You will. You will.
Jason, you're like, I don't know if I have the cold or the flu. What we get around here is called the crud. And that's what we get. And that's the RFR crud. And I'm full of it right now. So... but yes, I promise I'll be in stronger voice next month for RFR Live in Chicago. Get your tickets now. reggieslive.com, or just look for the link on the homepage at rebelforceradio.com.
All right. Before we finally leave this topic, there is one thing I want to bring up here, which I thought was very interesting. In addition to all of the wonderful Jabba's palace goodness that we're going to see, that obviously has a lot to do with the fact that we're getting this huge, incredible sail barge, and you're going to want to have various characters populate it, whether it be, Klaatu, whether it be Yak Face, Lando in Skiff Guard disguise, all that stuff. There are some new characters that are going to be shipping and showing up as part of the Black series. And something that disturbed me a little bit, and I think this is probably going to be a little controversial. I was looking at the case assortments, and you got some really, really great figures coming out. You've got some re-releases, which is great. So this is the opportunity for people, if you didn't get in on the Black series when they first came out about 4 or 5 years ago, you can get some of these characters now. They're re-releasing Yoda. They're re-releasing Episode 3 Anakin. Those have been very difficult to get. They're going to do an exclusive of Luke as he looked when he came out of the trash compactor with the hair slicked back, and the piece of crap on his face. That you're like, pick that off your cheek. Why is it on that little black piece? It drives me nuts every time I watch the movie. And there's some other cool characters, like there's some comic book characters. There's like Dr. Aphra is coming out in 6-inch. Whatever that droid is that she's got that looks like C-3PO, that's not C-3PO. There's an incredible General Grievous that's coming out. Finally in the 6-inch format. You've got you've got Ezra is coming out. You got Chopper is coming out, all in this realistic form. This beautiful Padme from episode 2 in the white outfit. You even have Admiral Holdo, right? Admiral Holdo. Okay, so I don't know a lot of Admiral Holdo fans. I'm sure that there are some out there, but this is what disturbed me. So I buy by the case, and I buy by some of the the big mail order toy distributors, and there is a case assortment of 8 Admiral Holdo figures. So someone at Hasbro said, you know what we're doing with Holdo? We're not just going to stick her, 2 per case or 1 per case with all the other characters. No. We're going to make sure that everybody gets a Holdo.
We're flooding the market,
whether you want it or not. So these retailers, your target, you're like, I want to get the assortment that has the battle droid, the Dr. Aphra, the Grievous, and the Padme. And they're like, oh, well, yeah, we can do that, but you're also going to have to buy the straight-up case of 8 Admiral Holdos. And you're like, Admiral who? Admiral Akbar, the fish guy, the lobster guy? No. No, remember Laura Dern? And you're like, I don't even remember Laura Dern being in that movie. That's what you're getting. You're getting 8 of her. This has nothing to do with it being a female character or a male character. When they do these straight-up cases, and really, like, who is out? Where is the demand for this Admiral Holdo figure to the point where you go, oh, my God, we got to do a straight-up case of these? I don't get it. And then collectors are going, I don't understand. I go to the store, all I see is Admiral Holdo. Where's my Mace Windu? Where's my Padme? Where's my Dr. Aphra? And you don't see it because you're being blocked by 8 Admiral Holdos. So I just, things that make you go, right? Things that make you go, Remember that song?
Yes.
So that's one of those things that make me go, But I think here's the larger question that I have, Jim. This is what I want to ask you this because I think it's important to note. Here we are, pre-Episode 9, post-Episode 7 and 8, post-Rogue One, post-Solo. And you are seeing some solo characters trickle in, and a little bit there of Episode 8 with Holdo showing up here. But for the most part, whether you look at the vintage retro collection, whether you look at the 3 3/4-inch collection, whether you look at the Black Series, it's classic trilogy, classic trilogy, classic trilogy, classic trilogy, a little bit of prequel trilogy, some Rebels in there, classic trilogy, classic trilogy, classic trilogy. What is going on with these beloved new characters, and why are they not on the shelves?
Well, they are on the shelves.
Well, right.
I see them all the time.
Yeah, they are on the shelves.
So that's just, there's going to be more. We're definitely going to get an influx, a huge avalanche of that merchandise featuring those characters. It's coming. So you don't want to have them up on the pegs, clogging up the pegs now. You want to reintroduce everyone just prior to Episode 9 hitting the theaters, and you want to clear the newer stuff out of the way so that when it hits in October for the big merchandising release, which will kick off a lot of the marketing for Episode 9, then it seems more fresh. You have these characters out there that you haven't been able to find for a while, like Poe. Or
I can go buy a Poe right now.
I guess you can.
All right, my point is, why aren't these new characters selling? That's my question. Why is it when the going gets tough and the chips are down, where does Hasbro go? They go to classic, and they go to pander to the fans of the original trilogy, and they pull out retro and they pull out vintage. That's the point that I'm making.
Okay.
What's wrong? Right. What's wrong? What is not happening? What's not clicking?
Well, I don't know if it's a case of not clicking or just the fact that all that vintage stuff is timeless and it's been the foundation of everything, and it should be out there along with the new stuff. I think there should be something that caters to the older collector, and there should be something that caters to the kid who wants to play and reenact the scenes from the new movies. I think there should be a healthy balance there. The marketplace is there, so satisfy the demand. That's what, I mean, you have to understand. You can't.
I don't see much evidence for a huge demand for the newer stuff. That's what I'm getting. I don't see much evidence.
The thing is I just never see it out on the pegs. I never see it on the store shelves. It's never there for me at retail. So I can't make any judgment call as to whether or not.
All right, well, maybe it's anecdotal and it's different, but I can tell you when I could drive you to my local Target right now, and I could show you 14 Jyn Ersos right now swinging from the pegs, along with a couple of Cassian Andors.
Right, because that's all I think they're shipping. I don't think their distribution sucks.
No, I don't think they're shipping them at all. I think they shipped them along with characters that people cared about, and people bought the characters that people cared about, and they left Cassian Andor, who, by the way, they're making a brand new TV show based around. Maybe they could do it stop-motion style with all the action figures that no one bought of his character. And meanwhile, find a Han Solo, find a Darth Vader, find a Luke Skywalker, find an Obi-Wan Kenobi, find a Greedo, find a Boba Fett. You're not going to, because as soon as those come out on the shelf, they're gone.
That's what people want.
Exactly. That's my point. And that's why we're going to go into headlines, because we got a couple of stories we can't leave out. We're already going long.
I have good news for you, my lord.
That's good news. Come closer, I have good news.
All right, well, let's get into a little episode 9 news, just a little bit, where Oscar Isaac was, a red carpet thing I think he might have been at. Is this where this clip is from? He was out and about.
I couldn't, it popped up from the AP.
Yeah.
And I went to look at the description right from the source, and it didn't give me any indication as to what Oscar was doing. And I haven't had time to look into Oscar's personal schedule for this week, which, of course, he shares with me on the Google Calendar.
Yeah, I don't seem to be able to, my password's not working on that.
Yeah. Well, for security reasons, he has to change it a lot. And
okay.
I usually am able to hack it. I mean, he's usually able to send the updated password to me in time, but I don't have it right now. But Oscar was definitely out promoting something. And he's got a bit of facial hair going.
Oh, that looks good.
But, I mean, I think Oscar probably grow a full beard in like a day and a half, so that doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, he's the type. He's got a 5 o'clock shadow by 8:30 a.m.
Yeah. My friend Lou, I drop him off at night, and then I pick him up the next morning. He's got a full beard. I don't. Some guys just have that ability.
They have that. That's so manly. But anyway, here he is. He's talking about episode 9 being fun. How about that? Fun.
Well, it was the most fun it's been.
It's fun.
There was just an energy and a looseness and an excitement to the whole production. And, knowing that this was the conclusion of not only our time there, but the 9, stories, these 9 episodes of the Skywalker saga, it's incredible, and I think people are going to be just blown away. Yeah.
Thanks so much.
I'm really going to struggle with this, Jim. We got how many months now of pre-promotion of this movie, and every time that I hear these people talking about, the end of this saga, it's the end of the saga, end of the Skywalker, these 9 films, this is it. This is it. It's not just the end of our time. It's the end of all time. The Skywalker stuff, they got to move on. They got to move on to the other important stuff that's in the Star Wars. What? I don't know, but it's not Skywalker. They're going to move on to the, I don't know, more laser swords or something. I just hate this idea that this Skywalker thing, it's almost like, we just can't wait to get through this Skywalker stuff. Once we get through that, where the gloves are off, we're really going to be able to create some amazing content for people. I don't know if I'm just getting grumpy or it's the sickness or what. Maybe. It could be. But I don't know. I'm tired of hearing it like it's an obligation or they can't wait. I'm not saying Oscar. I don't mean Oscar. I mean the way that it feels as though the spin machine is coming across to me is, this is it. This is it. Have fun. So complainers.
Right. Here's how I look at it, okay?
Help me out here.
They, Disney, okay, the people who run Star Wars today, they inherited this massive history and fan equity and mythology, huge. And I just think that they tried to play it safe with The Force Awakens, and people responded. But they were also being kind of held up against the wall as for like, well, aren't you going to do anything different with it? So they, with The Last Jedi, they went and did something different, and they've caused like civil war. I mean, it's like families are divided, friends aren't talking to each other. I mean, it's just mayhem. So I believe that the pressure of continuing on with the Skywalker and everything that's been established in the first 2 trilogies and all of that, to continue that mythology is just overwhelming, and they can't do it. They just they can't do it. So they're going to wrap up Episode 9. Of course, we'll then walk away with our impression of that. And I'm keeping a very open mind about that, and I'm curious to see how that's going to make the whole mythology fit all together. That's what they keep saying. But they want to just put an end to it and start with something fresh with the Game of Thrones guys and with the streaming series. The streaming series, you'll probably find more of your nostalgic Star Wars trappings and tropes and what have you. I think with the films, once they relaunch the cinematic franchise, then it will be vastly different from what we've ever seen before. And it's going to be ground zero. And that's fine. That's fair. That's, go for it. But to try to squeeze revolutionary new ideas or to try to change the overall vibe of everything that's happened in the past by inserting new stuff into the existing mythology is become a tough code to crack, I think. And it's like damned if you do and damned if you don't. And I think that puts a lot of pressure on these guys. Maybe that's a testimony more to where their abilities lie, but that's just the fact of the matter. I think Star Wars definitely needs a serious reboot at this point in time. You can't continue under the massive pressure of 40 years of history with this story, with this singular story.
Then hire people who can.
Well, I mean,
then hire people who can, because there are people out there that can do it.
I believe that. I do believe that.
Yeah. I remember reading a book. I think it was, it might have been William Shatner's Star Trek Movie Memories book. I believe it was, and they were talking about. I believe Shatner was talking. I think this was the book, but they at any point there was discussion about. All right. We gotta move on from the old guys in the Star Trek movie series, and we want to bring in the next generation, and we want to do a movie with them. But we gotta have a movie where the two meet. And so they got the concept artists so they sat around and they tried to break a story, and then they got the concept artists working, and somebody created this incredible movie poster for a original series and next gen meetup. This is before Generations. This was going to be Generations. And the poster was the classic Enterprise and the NCC 1701-A, and then the 1701-D, I believe, of the Next Generation, nose to nose, firing photon torpedoes at each other. That was going to be the poster. That was going to be the premise of the movie. Was these two incredible, iconic crews in battle against one another. And you're going to see the poster and go, how does this happen? And so they were going to do this, and Paramount tried like hell to get this thing made, and the original group of writers came back and they said, we can't do it. Well, why can't you do it? well, we can't find a way to write the story and create sympathy for both crews. And my response would have been, oh, okay, I understand. You're fired. Now I'm going to find writers that can. Because I believe it could have been good. And you know what we ended up with? Generations. We ended up with Picard watching Captain Kirk make frickin' breakfast in the Nexus with the guy from Clockwork Orange.
That's what it was.
I mean, Chancellor Valorum is actually who it was. Wasn't that? No, that wasn't Chancellor Valorum.
No. You're thinking of Michael McDowell.
Yeah. Michael McDowell, the guy from Clockwork. Anyway, my point is there are people that could do this. That's my point. And I'm really struggling with this notion that, and this is just me and my personal journey as a fan. I'm struggling with this notion of what is Star Wars and what is Star Wars once you get beyond the characters that George Lucas created. And part of me says it's Star Wars in name only, and it's not the spirit of Star Wars, and it won't be. And anyway, I don't want to be a total downer, so let's let Mark Hamill be the downer for me.
You're such a downer.
I know, but I'm being honest. This is totally honest.
No, that's fine. Oscar Isaac was promoting the new film Triple Frontier with Ben Affleck. And that's what he has opening up. And if you listen to that recording again, you can hear him definitely make a concerted effort to say Skywalker Saga. They're really pumping that in the marketing, and you hear it in Oscar's voice when he's like, "Wait, what was that they told?" Oh yeah, okay, yeah. You could. He goes,
yeah, right. Oh yeah, for sure. You've been. Oh, you want me to play it? Oh, I'll play it again. I'll play it again. It's not that long. Here it is.
Well, it was the most fun it's been. There was just an energy and a looseness and an excitement to the whole production. And, knowing that this was the conclusion of Skywalker Saga, but the 9, stories, these 9 episodes of the Skywalker Saga.
Good job, Oscar.
It's incredible, and I think people are going to be just blown away. Yeah, thanks so much.
Give the man his pay.
Exclusive audio of the earpiece that Oscar's wearing.
Yeah.
When he's out talking to the press, they're always monitoring him.
Yeah, they call that earpiece the Hamill. Put the Hamill in him. Yeah, because they're worried. They can't control Mark Hamill. He's out there talking. Now, Mark Hamill, have you seen these photos of him in this Nightfall series?
He looks unbelievable.
Oh, my gosh.
So intimidating. Oh, there's big billboards of Mark in that character adorning Sunset Boulevard as we speak. It's amazing.
It's incredible. I mean, this looks like Lord of the Rings. People go, I don't watch this show, so I don't know. But I'm looking. Mark Hamill calls it Game of Thrones without dragons. So all right, I'll buy that. But he did this really lengthy interview, and is there such a thing as a non-lengthy interview with Mark? Because he can go on, but he did this great interview with Den of Geek, and those guys over at denofgeek.com. And I want to skip just to the Star Wars stuff because he's talking all about Nightfall Season 2, and he talks a little bit about Batman and all that. It's a great interview. But the stuff that he says about Star Wars is so important, I think, regardless of which side you're on in the whole, Last Jedi is the worst thing to ever happen to Star Wars, or Last Jedi is, this incredible film made by this visionary filmmaker. It's very, very important, I think, to visit Mark's words. And, Mark was throughout the production of Episode 8, even the promotion of Episode 8, before we even saw the movie, leading up to it, Mark was sending out little warning shots to fans saying, I disagreed with Ryan on a lot of things, but he's the director, and what do I know? I've only been playing the character for 40 years. I don't know anything. He was saying things like that a little bit. Here we are, fast forward, we're almost we're a year and a half away from the release of the film. Mark's out promoting Nightfall, and they're asking him about Star Wars. And I'm going to quote from the article. It says, Hamill's complicated feelings. We all knew that they were complicated because he had on-the-record disagreements with the direction that the story was going. But Mark, as Jim has pointed out many, many times, is a pro. He's a pro, and he was hired to do a job. Now, he was there advocating for his point of view, but at the same time, it's very clear that it never interfered with his ability to work. By the way, that's no more clear than when you see the bonus feature on the Blu-ray for Last Jedi when they're shooting the goodbye scene when Luke is appearing to Leia there at the Resistance base. And he gives her the "no one's really gone" speech, and Jim, I didn't realize, but Carrie Fisher really breaks down at the end of that scene. Really breaks down, and Rian Johnson has to come over and kind of console her a little bit. Yeah. It's haunting because it's almost like, gosh, did she know? Sometimes when people and they're reaching the end of their life, they get these moments where it's very overwhelming, like they almost have a sixth sense.
I think she was tapping into. I think she was tapping into her skills as someone who can emote and bring raw emotion to the surface when needed for acting.
Yeah,
so
right. Well, that's true. Yeah, it's called acting, right?
Yeah, what kind of professional she is. And it's not like you could just flip a switch on and off. There's like it's like being in a plane. You go up and then you have to come down. Right. It's not that easy of a process. So,
yeah. But there's a number of quotes here, so bear with us because I think that these are all very important. So they're setting this up, reminding us about that Mark's feelings have been complicated regarding the fate of his character, which he's most associated with, and going back as far as December 2017, many different quotes have hit the headlines. They're asking they're asking Mark about this. And he says, the thing is, Luke changed so much between the first trilogy and the last trilogy. I got myself into trouble. I made a vow. I said that I'm not going to talk about the movies anymore because I think it's important for the audience to see them. My problem was I wasn't dealing with social media back then, where you say something and it goes around the world in 24 hours. If I were to answer your questions on paper, I'd think, oh, that sounds a little strong, or, oh, I shouldn't say this, but I have a tendency just to talk and talk and talk and talk, and you can cherry pick. I'll be reading something and I'll say, what moron said this? And then realize, oh, it's me. They can take selective comments you've made out of context and use it to support their argument. See, Mark hated Star Wars. Did I? So he is
happen.
Right. No, we don't do that. And we've always tried to provide context, particularly around Mark, because as everyone was jumping on the Mark Hates Episode 8 bandwagon, we were also quick to point out that he was always throwing that under there, saying, yeah, but what do I know? Rian Johnson's an incredible filmmaker. He's a great storyteller. That's not what I do. I'm an actor, So I think Mark has played a good balancing act. However, I think it's pretty clear that Mark, his disagreement that he's had with the story of the sequel trilogy hasn't changed. They say that Mark is reasonable, even-handed on the subject, which we just claimed here. But as a fan himself, he gets it. He says, I was once describing Star Wars fans, and I said that they're passionate, they're opinionated, and they feel a sense of ownership because they've invested so much time in these characters and these stories. And I realized I was describing myself. It can get you into trouble because I don't control the storylines. I'm sort of like a musician. I read the music and I try to play it to the best of my ability. That doesn't necessarily mean I like the tune, but that's not my job. Well, right there.
Yeah. I don't like the tune.
I don't like the tune, but my job is to play, second violin, in the string section of the orchestra, and I'm going to play it to the best of my ability because that's why I was hired. Now, he does go on to say that after the Hollywood Reporter story broke last year that Bob Iger had decided to slow down. What was the word he used, Jim? Did he say a slowing down of the Star Wars?
Did he say slowing down? Oh, I think we have a voicemail from Mr. Iger that probably we should pay some attention to here before we sign off. But it was a slowdown, I think.
Yeah.
He said he was, the buck stopped there with Bob, and he was going to take the heat for the poor scheduling of Solo, and he said that they decided to slow things down. So it meant, whatever was in development was shelved.
Well, Mark applauds this. He applauds this in this interview with Den of Geek. He says, in our day, it was 3 years apart. Now they're 2 years apart with an independent movie in between. I say to the executives at Disney, really? Han Solo 5 minutes after our movie? Give it a rest. They say, well, we have to keep the schedule clear for Mary Poppins.
Oh, now come on. What kind of world are we living in? When Mary Poppins gets prioritized over Star Wars.
Not even the real Mary Poppins. Not even the real one.
What kind of world are we living in?
I mean, if it was Julie Andrews, okay, maybe.
We were questioning this decision, and we said, why isn't Solo coming out in December? Everyone told us, because of the scheduling with Mary Poppins. I couldn't believe it then, and hearing it now makes me want to hurl.
Yeah. Well, here's what I do like what Mark says. He goes, but I can be mouthy because, what are they going to do? Fire me? You're Luke Skywalker. They can't really fire you. They can kill you, though, Mark, and they did do that. He says some decisions still rankle. He remains shocked by Han Solo's fate, slain by his own son and Luke's nephew, the powerful dark side warrior Kylo Ren, formerly known as Ben Solo. The Force Awakens, he goes, I just thought Luke's never going to see his best friend again. You look at it in a self-centered way. I said that it was a big mistake that those three people would never reunite in any way. I guess I was wrong because nobody seems to care. I have to stipulate that I care, but it didn't really seem to. Well, look, right there. It's like, stop, hold the presses. Half of Star Wars fandom cares.
I think he meant that no one working on the film.
Okay. All right. The brass.
Creative. Yeah. Yes. All the elements behind the scenes.
Yeah. The creative team. That's true. So he's making these suggestions, and he's lamenting the fact that, look, let's face it. When we heard that there was going to be episodes 7, 8, and 9, I don't know about you, Jim, but I immediately had fantasies of 3 more movies with my 3 favorite characters of all time. I mean, I was really thinking. I wasn't thinking about, well, Harrison said he wanted to kill off Han, and I was thinking, oh my God. I mean, I figured they might all be dead by the end of it. I really did. I was like, okay, and I don't mean the actors. I mean, okay, so maybe they're gonna, pass the baton, and there was discussion of that. But I thought they would do it gradually, but not in this systematic approach that they've taken so far.
Right. I thought for sure the big 3 would be the primary focus of the sequel trilogy as the new characters emerge around them.
Yes. Who would then perhaps take off in another trilogy.
Yes. And so by the end of episode 9, you truly have that passing of the baton, and you send off the new big 3 or big 4, you send them off on their own adventure. But I thought for sure these sequel films would have been focused on Han, Luke, and Leia, Chewie, R2 and 3PO, and Lando. And have them together, flying the Falcon together, going on the final mission. Something like, they have to take the Falcon out of mothballs, and they're skipping out on the Republic to go fight some growing evil in the galaxy, and nobody knows they left. Kind of like what they did in Star Trek 3. Okay, but still, that's fine. I mean, that was, you had all the characters together, and you had that feeling, that chemistry between all of them. Instead, the focus of the sequel trilogy has been around the new characters all the way through, regulating the original characters into the background, and then swiftly killing them off in the case of Luke and Han. And I felt like maybe a more it was like they were trying to change everything too soon.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
You know, it was like everything was flipped up on its head too soon. And at the end of the day, like, none of these new characters really fit in with the old characters or the events of the first two trilogies. And so it's becoming harder and harder to grasp hold of the characters and really root for them as protagonists. With Luke, we knew everything about Luke. We knew that his father served as a Jedi. His father, he had no parents. He was raised in poverty by his aunt and uncle out on a farm.
I still call them middle class. We've debated this in the past, but I think they're middle class. But
oh, please.
You say that they're poor.
Well, I mean, okay, poverty may be pushing it, but
upper middle class. I'm going to go with even upper middle class.
I'll say middle.
I think they're living in the Tatooine suburbs.
Come on, what are we going to do? Who are we, the Tatooine Census Bureau? I mean, what's going on here, man? Come on. But I just felt like they had a strong foundation to begin with, and it was turned inside out from the get-go. And so now we're just listening to Mark Hamill talk about things that make him dissatisfied with these new films. And I never thought in my wildest dreams that when Star Wars finally comes back and you have Mark, Carrie, and Harrison, and especially Mark, I never thought in a million years he would be airing such dissatisfaction with the way he was brought back.
Listen to this. I've never seen him go this far in an interview, okay? So he talks about, okay, no one cared. He goes, but I have to stipulate that I care, but it didn't really seem to affect the larger audience. Now, that's where I'm like, okay, Mark, it's one thing to say that, you know, perhaps Disney or Lucasfilm didn't care or the writers didn't care, but he says it didn't seem to affect the larger audience. Well, it didn't seem to affect the box office of Episode 7 and perhaps 8, but it certainly, I think, affected the sentiment of fandom after Episode 8. Certainly affected Solo. He says Luke, Han, and Leia will never be together again, and I'll probably never get to work with Harrison again. Then the second thing was that they killed me off. I thought, oh, okay, you should push my death off to the last one. That's what I was hoping when I came back. No cameos, and a run of the trilogy contract. Did I get any of those things? Because as far as I'm concerned, the end of 7 is really the beginning of 8. I got one movie. They totally hornswoggled me. It's true. It really is true. They really did only give him one movie. You can't count Episode 7 because he's talked about. Right. But he's, you know, and he does have a killer entrance, maybe one of the greatest entrances of all time.
Majestic.
Oh, gorgeous. And there was so much goodwill that was left on the table even after they killed off Han. So they say that he has made peace. He claims he's made peace with the unfulfilled expectations. He goes, listen, I never expected to come back. We had a beginning, a middle, and an end. That's what I said. Why mess with it? It's not something that worries me because it's all about the new generation, as it should be. Some changes had to be made, however. He says, they had me walking by 3PO, not even acknowledging it. Now, we all know this, right? Okay, so this is the big battle on Crate, and Luke comes back, and he's all dark and lovely in the beard and in the hair, and looking svelte, and he's approaching Leia, or he's already talked to Leia, I believe, right? And he's about to go out and face off against Kylo Ren and the big walker, and he sees 3PO. Well, originally, he was supposed to just walk by and not even acknowledge him. He says, right. He goes, they had me walking by 3PO, not even acknowledging him. I said, I can't do that. The Last Jedi director, Rian Johnson, said, okay, go over and do whatever. So I went over and I did whatever. They say it in the script. Forget the past, kill it if you have to, and they're doing a pretty good job. This is Mark Hamill.
Mark
Hamill, ladies and gentlemen. Oh. Mark Hamill. This isn't some YouTube commentator. Wow. This is Luke Skywalker Hamill saying this. So this idea that this disappointment is all manufactured by a bunch of shocking people on YouTube, get with it, folks. It's not. It's real. Mark Hamill said that.
Mark Hornswoggled Hamill.
Yes. So he says, they're doing a pretty good job. He also talked about Carrie Fisher, who he was friends with, obviously, for many, many years. He says she was irrepressible and unforgettable, the one who banged the table and yelled, "I'm in," as soon as George Lucas raised the subject of a new trilogy over lunch. We happen to know when that lunch may have taken place, Jim. Remember? We speculate that it happened in Orlando.
Yes.
At Celebration
6. Yes.
Yeah, because George came in with his big caravan of black SUVs, and we knew that Carrie was in. She was obviously at the convention. So was Mark, of course, Anthony Daniels, and I believe at one point George let it slip. Yeah, we all went out to lunch, and we're all like in the audience going, "What? We went out to lunch? Why would they go out to lunch? Why are they going out to lunch? What are they talking about? Oh my God, you think?" I remember that was so much fun. We were just speculating like crazy. We didn't know anything. It took a couple years before we realized that we were onto something. But apparently Carrie was banging the table, with her fist and saying, "I'm in." And he says that he counseled her to work better on her poker face. He says, but her response, astute as ever, was just to ask him how many good roles come to women in their 50s in Hollywood. Hamill jokes that he'd initially thought of Ford as his get out clause because he considered him too rich and too cranky to return to the franchise. But he knew that as soon as his old pal signed up, he said, "I knew I'd been drafted." And then goes on to talk about Carrie, how much fun she was, day in and day out, and clearly they were very close, and he's very fond of her. And anyway, it's a great interview. We shared with you the high points of his commentary about Star Wars, but Mark Hamill out there continuing to speak his truth. I'm not saying that this is the truth. This is Mark Hamill's truth.
Well, there's the one thing that really, outside of his amazing candor throughout this, the one thing that really stands out to me is when he says that he only got one movie. Because as far as he's concerned, the end of 7 is really the beginning of 8. Now, Mark is saying this after he has shot his scenes for Episode 9, which lead me to believe that Mark Hamill is barely going to be in Episode 9. I don't think he's going to have much of a presence at all in the film if he's talking this way. If he's saying in current interviews, "I got one movie."
That is a good point, Jim. I had not even thought of it. The Episode 9 hadn't even played in my thinking here at this point. That's a really good observation. We could see a cameo. We could see a Mark Hamill cameo the size of Yoda's cameo in Episode 8.
That's right. So I don't think Luke Skywalker is going to be a large presence in Episode 9 at all. If Mark is talking in these terms, sure, he's not specifically saying anything about Episode 9, but he's saying, "I got one movie."
Yeah.
So that I think he doesn't really consider too much meat on the bones for his role in Episode 9. And that kind of
that's a scoop. That is a scoop. That's a scoop and a half right there, really. I don't know that anyone else has analyzed this in that same way. So that is very, very astute of you. I don't care what anyone says. Jimmy Mack, smart guy.
I don't care what anyone says, which really, indicates a lot of people are saying stuff.
No, I don't care what Wendy says. All right, You're a smart guy. All right. But no, this has been a ton of fun. We got to wrap things up, but it has been a blast getting back in the saddle. And
what
obviously,
about Mr. Iger? Come on.
All right, let's take a look and see. We've got a special voicemail line that only Mr. Iger has access to. This is it.
Gents, just a quick idea. How about a late-night talk show on the platform featuring Lando Puppet? He could be, instead of a desk, he could float around in a jacuzzi filled with Bacta, have Uggernauts in Slave Leia costumes, Lobos the sidekick. It sounds like a real winner. Watch that Crossfire, boys. Take care.
Did he say, did Bob call them Uggernauts?
Uggernauts.
I think my grandmother called them Uggernauts. All right. Well, Puppet Lando, you know what? If things don't work out here on Rebel Force Radio, it sounds like Mr. Iger might have a position for you. I don't know. I like what he said. Not behind a desk, like floating around in
the back to tank. Yeah, and that presents some logistical nightmares. So we might have to workshop this thing with Mr. Iger.
You ever see what Bacta does to felt? It's not pretty.
I think Mr. Iger has broken into some of the new alcoholic beverages they're going to be serving at Galaxy's Edge.
Rebel Force Radio.